Hey there, this is Natalie, and in this video I want to talk about one of the most popular and interesting of the more well-known Re Zero theories. So this isn't one of my own crack ones. A few people have asked me to cover this one, and I did mention it in my video about the Otto theory, so here it is. This theory will be safe for anime onlys as of Re Zero Season 2 Episode 18, where there is something that's in that episode that's relevant to the theory, but I'm uploading it just before that episode comes out, so if you're anime only and avoiding spoilers, you may want to wait until after you've seen Episode 18 on Wednesday. As always, please consider subscribing if you want to see more Re Zero content, including theories, analysis, and coverage of both the latest episodes and the latest chapters of Re Zero Arc 7 as they're released, if you're a web novel reader. It's really hard work keeping up with everything at the moment, and so I really appreciate the encouragement from you guys in subscribing and talking to me in the comments. And with that YouTuber stuff out of the way, let's get into the theory, which is, should Rem have existed? Okay, so to elaborate on the premise of this theory, it is that Ram, who is the reincarnation of the Oni god, wasn't supposed to have a twin. Ram was supposed to be born with two horns, being even more OP than she was, and have been the chosen one the dwindling Oni race were waiting for. But someone with mysterious and frankly godlike powers, who didn't want the Oni to have that kind of power, caused Rem to exist in the womb. The Oni traditionally view twins, who only have one horn each, as cursed children, and kill them at birth, something that would have happened to Rem and Ram if Ram hadn't been able to demonstrate her power, even as a newborn baby. It would actually have been a pretty good plan, only what the perpetrator didn't predict was that Ram would instinctively want to protect this sister, and on hearing baby Rem crying, would activate her horn, causing the Oni elder who was about to kill them both to see the strength of it and let them live. So, who would have both the motivation and the power to do this? Well, the answer is, as it is to 90% of Re Zero theories, Pandora, though in this case it does actually make sense for it to be her, rather than her largely unknown powers and objectives being used to plug a hole in an otherwise good theory. You see, we do know that the witch cult killed everybody in Rem and Ram's village and cut off Ram's horn, so we know that the witch cult was against the Oni gaining the power of the Oni god, or continuing to exist in general. And we know that Pandora is strongly connected with, if not outright in charge of, the witch cult. This means that she was probably aware of the attack on the Oni village, perhaps even having ordered it herself, maybe as a way to take down Ram while she was still young, where the original plan failed. Now, would Pandora have the power to create life? Well, Pandora's abilities are strange, and we don't know yet what kind of limitations they have, or what the trick to them is, if there is one. But she seems to be able to change reality to her will with just her words. She can even use this to make it so she didn't die if she's killed, and we also see her use it to change who's present at an incident. It would seem like there does have to be some rules in place for this, or she wouldn't need to recruit any underlings or do anything by way of plans. She'd just be able to say things were the way she wanted them to be, for instance that the Oni had never existed, and they wouldn't be a problem for her anymore. An ability like that would be impossible to write, where she can not only change what's happening now, but also change anything in the past with just a statement, completely breaking just about everything in the setting. And so it's likely that, like with the way the authority of gluttony can change the world to remove all traces of someone whose name's been eaten, and alter the memories of those who knew them, but there are rules about who can be eaten, and it has to be done in a certain way. Certain conditions need to be met for Pandora to do things. We also don't ever see her use this method to kill someone, so it could be that her power can't undo someone's existence, so she still has to kill someone she wants dead via more conventional means, rather than just saying they were never born or they died 2 weeks ago on the toilet and removing them from opposing her. But since we don't know what her limitations are, and I don't want to just say, of course Pandora could do it, without looking into whether there's enough we know already to say for sure if she could, we can consider whether there are any other authorities that we do know about that would have been able to create a twin for Ram, both to see whether it's the type of thing Tape might have allowed Pandora's authority of vainglory to do itself, or something someone under Pandora in the witch cult could have simply done for her. Now, creating life is something we have seen one authority do before, in the form of Daphne being able to create witch beasts, and so it could be that Pandora's authority too can create life under certain conditions, and she simply said that Ram's pregnant mother was having twins. This would be interesting if Rem was created in a similar manner to a witch beast, because Rem does have a trait that mainly only witch beasts seem to have, of being able to smell the scent of the witch. But I think it's more likely that she didn't create Rem from nothing in this way, and instead divided Ram into 2 unborn babies. I won't go into it too much because it involves spoilers about a character who hasn't been shown yet, but there is an authority that can transform people, and it can, canonically, transform one person into lots of things. These transformations do also seem to be permanent, unless they're undone or the person transformed is given something far more powerful than normal healing magic. This isn't an authority belonging to a long-dead witch like Daphne, and it should be something Pandora would have had access to when Rem and Ram were born, assuming she actually is in control of the witch cult. So, if Pandora appears to have a reason to want to stop the Oni getting the power of their reincarnated god on their side, even if we don't know exactly why yet, and she should also have been able to create Rem, either using her own authority or that of someone else on her side, then it looks like it's definitely possible for this theory to be true. But what is there about Rem that makes it seem like there could be anything weird about her existence to begin with? Well, there's a very good video by Father Bubbus about why Rem is suspicious that I'll link to in the description, because he's done the research into a lot of the ideas that have been going around about this, but which we can't really say are anything more than theories, like the idea that Roswell's gospel doesn't include Rem, which we don't know either way about for sure, given we only learn anything about his gospel after Rem's name has been erased. While Roswell's gospel and the plans he wants to take seem to function just fine in a world where Rem's forgotten, it always seemed like Ram was going to be the one who was important to his goals anyway, so that doesn't really tell us much. Father Bubbus also covers some stuff about Rem's potential susness that relates to spoilers, and since I'm keeping this video anime only safe, I won't go into that part. So definitely check out his video if you haven't already, and this idea about Rem is piquing your interest. Still, one of the most important parts he does mention in that video I will briefly talk about here, and it's a moment that was cut from season 1 of the anime. Like most important stuff cut from season 1, it involves Al, Priscilla's knight, and in this case it sees him having a strange reaction to meeting Rem, who is with Subaru when he visits Priscilla to ask for her help, just as he did in the anime. At first, Al thinks Rem is Ram, and he's completely fine with her, but then she says Ram is her sister, and he gets really upset about it, and says something along the lines of, to think that it is still alive. He seems to know about Ram, and he doesn't get angry when he thinks Rem is Ram, so it seems like the it he's referring to is Rem. There are all kinds of things hinting to Al either currently being, or having been in the past, involved with the witch cult, with a lot of people, including me, thinking he may well be the Sin Archbishop of Pride. I have a very old video about that if you're interested, though please forgive how it looks, where it was one of the first ones I made, and I'm a writer, not a graphics person. Whether he was there when the witch cult attacked the village or not is the subject of a lot of speculation, but he at least seems to know about it. Now, for him to describe the Oni god as an it that he thought was dead might make sense, but it seems that it's Rem he's talking about that way, given he's fine with Rem when he thinks she's Ram. Unless he knew Rem to be something unnatural, why would he talk about her as an it? This is all pure speculation, but let's say Al was formerly involved with the witch cult and knew about the twin they'd created for the Oni god, expecting her to be killed at birth. Say he left the organisation and now, thinking back, he's disgusted by the idea of someone being artificially created that way, thinking of Rem as an abomination that should never have been, and being freaked out that she's still alive. Then his reaction would make sense. It's a small scene and one that does seem to only exist to hint at future mysteries, which is probably why it was cut from the anime, so as to not raise questions in the first season that would seem like they didn't really go anywhere until several seasons later, if those seasons were even made. But for the novels, it does seem like it's supposed to make us wonder about the twins as much as about Al. Still, cut content aside, based on what we know up to the current point in the anime, there are a few things about Rem that are strange. For one, it seems that Ram's birth was prophesied by her people. They were expecting her to be the reincarnation of the Oni god, and so if they knew this special child was going to be born, it seems a bit strange that she'd end up being a twin. The Oni have a very low birth rate. This is something discussed in part 1 of the Oni Sisters of the Hidden Village prequel novel, which I have a video summarising if you want to know more about the time between Rem and Ram's birth and the attack on the village, which we saw flashbacks of in season 1. With children not being born very often at all, and Ram's birth being something they had specific expectations for, it does seem like Rem's existence was an extremely unlikely event. This doesn't prove anything, because it could have just been luck of the draw, but it is an example of Rem's existence being surprising. There's also Rem's ability to smell the witch's scent, something we haven't seen really anybody else be able to do, other than witch beasts, or people who have witch factors themselves. Garfield claimed he could smell it, but he was lying, so it isn't something even people with heightened senses like beastmen can normally do. There could be a couple of ways to explain it, from Rem being able to smell it because she was created by a witch's authority, through to this being an ability that the reincarnated Oni god, Ram, was supposed to have had, where a unique ability belonging to her wouldn't be so strange, that ended up in Rem when they were split into two people. We can also think about how Rem and Ram do seem like they could be two halves of one person, maybe a two-horned Oni with purple hair. They don't really have any skills or talents that are duplicated between the two of them, whether it's the spells they can use, Ram's clairvoyance, Rem's ability to smell the witch, or even ordinary things like cooking and cleaning, which Ram is almost impossibly bad at for someone so smart. Even their temperaments are like they could be different sides to a single person. Interestingly, if this theory were true, being split in this way would actually have proven to be a good thing. The Oni god is said to be someone almost omnipotent in their strength, a warlike Oni filled with bloodlust and the will for domination. Ram got most of its strength, but she also got only the more rational, wise side of its character, with the weaker Rem getting the more impulsive, emotionally driven side. For the more wrathful side of the Oni god to end up in someone who wasn't omnipotent in their strength and who was painfully aware of their shortcomings, while the powerful side is tempered by Ram's more stoic nature and rationality, neither of these Oni develops into the monster the Oni god could have become. But as fun and interesting as this theory is, it's not without its holes. And while I do like this theory, and think it could work out well if it turns out to be true, where it doesn't really diminish anything about Rem's life or character that she might have been created this way, but does add an interesting twist to what Ram's overall role in the story is going to be, and to the dealings of the witch cult. I would just like to look at some of the stuff going against this theory before I finish. Firstly, other than the Al conversation, and again, we don't know for sure that he is connected to the witch cult, Nobody we see tied to the witch cult who meets Rem or Ram in the main story seems to have any particular reaction to them. When Betelgeuse is torturing Rem, it doesn't seem like he has any particular idea who she is, and while it's off screen, he and his fingers also kill Ram in that loop. This could probably be explained by the fact Betelgeuse doesn't really seem to care about witch cult business if it isn't related to reviving Satella, so it doesn't really rule anything out, but it's still worth noting. More interestingly though, when Lay and Regulus see Rem at the start of season 2, she introduces herself and activates her Oni strength, so they would definitely know who she was if the witch cult were at all interested in the whole Oni god thing. But it seems like it's what she says about Subaru being her hero that makes Lay interested in eating her, rather than her being an Oni. We know Regulus has been associated with Pandora for over 100 years, so if there had been any plan involving Rem and Ram, it would seem like he should know about it. And he could also have killed Rem there, given he killed a lot of other people at that scene. But neither of them seem to treat Rem as a valuable target in herself. It's also true that a lot of the stuff that's suspicious about Rem, other than the owl stuff, which is probably intentionally hard to explain, could mean nothing at all. Rem and Ram may just have different powers and personalities because that's how Tappei wanted to write twins, as kind of complementing each other and balancing each other out. Or maybe because he wanted to explore the red Oni, blue Oni trope. Rem being able to smell the witch's scent might just be a sensitivity that he wanted someone to have, because it's interesting to have someone who can smell it around Subaru, so he just made it a rare thing that Rem has for no special reason. People in this setting have different talents and abilities beyond the more carefully explained systems of divine protections and authorities, so it doesn't really break anything for there to be no reason why Rem can do this. As a final point, there's one last thing that some people see as working against this theory, but which I think could actually be looked at another way and count in favour of it, and that is decisions that Tappei made as he was developing the story. It's known that Rem, like Otto and Petra, were characters he didn't originally plan to be especially important or to feature as much as they do in the story. With Petra, I definitely think she does feel like an ascended extra, where there's really not much that would change about things if she'd just been left as a named character among the Arlem villagers. But with Otto and Rem, there was already the scope in what was established about them early in the story for them to be given a lot more to do. So looking back now, it's hard to imagine Re Zero with them as only smaller side characters. Still, if Tappei wasn't planning for Rem to play a big part in Subaru's story when he first came up with things, but was planning for there to be the character of Ram, the Oni god, and her relationship to Roswell, then why would he even have conceived of Rem in the first place, if she wasn't there to make an idea about Ram for later on work out? Originally, we may have seen Ram as more of a main character, and Rem more like somebody like Frederica, the sibling of a main character who isn't irrelevant, but also definitely isn't part of the core cast. But Frederica has a lot of reasons to be in the story, even though she doesn't get much screen time, and I feel like it would have been the same with Rem. Her ongoing role in the story might not have been so important in Tappei's original vision, but for her to exist at all, she would probably have been part of some bigger idea of what was going on in this setting, and with the more prominent characters she's connected to. So really, that's all I have to say about this theory, in terms of what it is and what there is going for and against it. Please let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this one are, and once again, please consider subscribing because it really helps me out. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.